Hey guys, this is Dr. Paul Lynch. I'm a anesthesiologist and pain management doctor from Scottsdale, Arizona. And I made my first videos on COVID in about 6 months last week because of the raging Delta variant. And I wanted to give an update this week based on how bad things are getting. And the answer is they're getting pretty bad. This new Delta variant potentially has an R naught as high as 8. And so what that means is it's almost as contagious as chickenpox or measles or some of these terrible diseases that rip through communities. An R naught of 8 means that for every person infected, they infect 8 others. And so that is a massive number that we didn't have to deal with in the early days of this pandemic, because the R naught of the original version was probably between 2 and 2.5. And so I made some videos last week. If you haven't seen them, go back and watch those. If these videos have helped you, please share them with your friends. You might just be able to save a life with it if you're able to give them good information. Today's video, I just want to catch you up on exactly what happened in the last week since I first made the videos, and kind of where we're going from here. I'm going to try to do all this in less than 10 minutes. And so first of all, on the world stage, we had almost 700,000 cases yesterday, including 10,000 deaths. And so the United States is kind of leading the charge with cases. In the United States, we had 131,000 cases. I just want to emphasize that about a month ago, we were all feeling really good, like we had gotten this behind us. We were having about 10,000 cases a day. And then the Delta variant hit. And when the Delta variant hit, it spread very, very rapidly. A lot of people have asked me this question, like, how do you know if it's the Delta variant? Well, you won't really know. If you get tested and get a normal PCR test, it's just going to say positive or negative. But labs across the country will send in a portion of their test to get sequenced, a DNA sequencing, to find out what's the variations in this virus. And what we found now is close to 90% of the cases in the United States are the Delta variant. And so it's ripping very, very fast through the US. We had 131,000 cases, including 30 states that had over 1,000 cases in a day. When this was hitting really hard in January and February, I used to use that as a measure of how widespread this was. And I think we got up to about 40 states at the same time that got at least 1,000 cases in a day. Well, yesterday we had 30 states. So across the United States, we're getting hit. And the unvaccinated states, the states that tend to have really low vaccination rates, particularly the South, they're being hit the hardest. So Florida, for example, had 23,000 cases yesterday, and 200 people died just in the state of Florida. Across the entire United States, we had 750 deaths yesterday, which is just kind of an intolerable number for healthcare providers. I'm going to talk and put all the links below, as I've done before, so you can look at these numbers and make decisions for yourself. But I'm going, right now I'm just on worldometers.info, and now I'm going over to ourworldindata.org. Some people have said, yeah, Dr. Lynch, cases are up, but death rates aren't. And that's not really true. Actually, Arizona so far has been protected a little bit on the death side, but we're seeing that change in the last few days. But across the United States, there's been a pretty significant trend that started almost a month ago. So we hit a bottom towards the end of June of around 200 deaths per day. And as you heard yesterday, we hit 750 deaths. But if you look on Our World in Data, you can actually look at things on a 7-day rolling average. And it shows that even our 7-day rolling average was 500 yesterday. So about a 1.5 time increase in deaths over just about 30 days. And that number is going to go higher. And I'm going to show you guys that in a second. I started looking at hospitalizations as well, and I'll put a link to this below. But hospitalizations were down to about 10 or 12,000 people a day that were in the hospital due to COVID in the beginning of July or the end of June. And that number's up to 44,000 today. So it's quadrupled in a very, very fast time. And that's a little bit consistent with what Delta does. It makes people sick a lot faster. You're actually getting sicker faster, and you're staying sicker longer. I said this on an earlier video, but the Delta variant will increase your viral load by 1,000 times over the original COVID, which just kind of blows my mind. I know a lot of people have followed me, and I went to New York City when it first hit, and I saw a lot of death and destruction firsthand. And I can't imagine something that carries 1,000 times more virus, what it's going to do to people. So I'm looking right now on the Johns Hopkins website, and I'm going to put a link to this below, but I just want to point out, I'm looking at percent positive. This is one of the main measures that I've used, and also other epidemiologists and the CDC, to tell how prevalent this is in your community. It's the go-to number that I look at daily, is how it's affecting Arizona or Oklahoma or other places where I have people that I love. And so what's cool about the Johns Hopkins website, and I'll put a link below, is you can see like red, orange, yellow, green on your percent positive by state. And if you just look at it, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that it's hitting all the unvaccinated states really, really hard. And this is percent positive. So for example, Georgia is 22% positive. Mississippi is 48% positive. Oklahoma is 40% positive. And then other states where there's high vaccination rates like Vermont are 2.6% positive. So I just want to say that again. Right now, like in Mississippi, that I think has the lowest vaccination rate in the country, 48% of the tests that they did over the last 7 days have come back positive. And in Vermont, that has one of our highest rates, only 2% came back positive. And so if you're on the fence on whether you're going to get vaccinated and you look at data, I'd really recommend you look at this data and think about what that means. But basically in communities where you're not getting vaccinated, the Delta variant is ripping through, and where we are getting vaccinated, it's stopping. They're getting like a sense of like a mini herd immunity in some of these states that have high vaccination rates. And so I'll put a link to all this below. I'm going to look on the covid19.healthdata.org. This is the IHME consortium that I've used for the last year and a half to try to kind of predict where we're going. And I want to start with the United States in general. I just want to talk about deaths again. We've had about 611,000 deaths so far to COVID reported. You can generally multiply that number by 1.5 because there's so many more deaths than are actually being reported. And I've got into this in some past videos, and I might do it again in the future. So that brings our total death toll really probably closer to 900,000. But if you just take reported deaths, we're at 611,000 today, and the IHME consortium is saying there'll be close to 700,000 over the next 3 months. So we're looking to lose, before December 1st, almost 4 months. We're looking to lose another 100,000 people to this over like 4 months, which to me is really terrible. On the IHME website, you can look at multiple variables, and you can look at projections, and then best case and worst case, and if we wore a mask and if we didn't. If you look at daily deaths, their best guess is that daily deaths are going to go over 1,000 by around September 5th, and that's going to be our peak on this wave. And so today we're around 500 a day on average, and we're going to double that over the next month. If you look at hospital resources, though, they're going to go from today probably around 40 or 50,000 total beds being used up to almost 100,000 beds by about September 1st. And if you go back and look at January when we hit our other peak, we were about 140,000 then. So not quite as bad as January from a hospital utilization, but pretty close, hitting probably 100,000 beds needed by September 1st. What about daily infections? Well, this is where we just don't know. And so if you're interested in this stuff, go to this website and look at our projections. And what you'll see is that the difference between the worst case scenario and current projections is massive. And it's because doctors are still trying to figure out this Delta variant. We honestly don't completely know, and there's not enough data. But right now, we're looking at daily infections, actual infections. This is what blows people's mind. We had 130,000 reported, but the IHME consortium is actually saying we probably have double or triple or quadruple that number. So they're saying that the current projections, we actually have about 470,000 people getting infected a day, and that number is actually peaking pretty soon in the next week or so at maybe around 500,000 cases, and then we'll start to come down. But what's interesting is their worst case scenario is that it would continue to go on for another month or so and would end up peaking closer to 750,000 cases, and that's just because they haven't had enough time to study this Delta variant. I'm going to look at just the Arizona data for my Arizona followers. The Arizona data shows our best guess is that we're not really peaking here yet, that we're probably not going to peak until the first week of October. And we saw this last year where we were sometimes a couple of months behind. And by the way, sorry, this is the first week of October on deaths. If you just look at daily infections, it's looking like we're going to peak sometime in the first half of September, and then deaths will peak about a month later in the first week of October. And so, but once again, if you look and you can search by Arizona, the variation in what we think is going to happen and what could happen is massive. And so if you look just on daily deaths, we think it's going to peak, around 40 or 50, but that could go as high as 110. And so we don't completely know. I do want to just quickly look on the Arizona Department of Health. Yesterday, we had 2,826 cases reported, including 42 deaths. And so that's a pretty significant number. Anyone here locally that's feeling like this isn't hitting Arizona yet, it definitely is. We're a little bit delayed behind other states, but it's starting to hit with 2,800 new cases and 42 deaths. That's pretty incredible. And I'm not going to spend too much more time on the Arizona data because I want to just talk a little bit about vaccinations. I've had tons of conversations about vaccinations this week. As a matter of fact, I came back to my own business after being out for a week on vacation. My boys were in a big golf tournament for kids. And I came back and we were talking about new mask mandates and what we were going to do. And I basically just said to my business, I don't really want to talk about mask mandates until we talk about vaccines and what we're doing as a company, as Arizona, as society. And so we've had a lot of conversations this week about vaccinations. And I think my advice to people when you're talking about vaccinations is that we have to kind of keep a level head. We have to stay cool-headed. We have to understand why people don't want to be vaccinated. We need to listen to their reasons, and we need to be empathetic. And so, I've tried to do that with my own business, with my own friends, and I think it's important for all of us. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of data about vaccinations because it helps all of us. There's a lot of good polls out there, and it looks like at this point, about 76% of Americans either have been vaccinated or plan to. Interestingly, doctors, it's about 98% of physicians that have either been vaccinated or plan to. And so physicians have done a pretty good job of leading the way on this vaccination issue. But across America, the numbers aren't quite that good. So it's 76% either are vaccinated or plan to be. If you look at that 24% that aren't vaccinated, there's a lot of different reasons, and I want to go through a little bit of that today that might help some of you guys. But I would say that about half of them could change their mind. There was an article that I'll attach below that says it's maybe only about a fourth of them. But if you dig into it and look at it, I think it's actually maybe a half that may change their mind. And so there are probably 10 to 12% of people that no matter what, they're just never going to get vaccinated. And that's their decision. And I think instead of getting upset and angry and arguing, we should kind of understand where they're coming from, try to be empathetic as much as we can. But also as a doctor, if I can talk to someone and understand their reasonings, maybe I can help them make the decision to get vaccinated, which is right for them. So I want to give you guys the top 6 reasons that people aren't getting vaccinated. Number 1 is either they have a lack of access and it's either real or perceived. Sometimes it's perceived. I watched Bryson DeChambeau give an interview and he was talking about how he wasn't vaccinated and then he got COVID and he missed the Olympics. Pretty big deal. But he said, he was happy because he didn't want to take a vaccine from someone else that needed it more. What was interesting about that is Bryson's considered one of the smartest golfers in the world. And he legitimately, I don't think he was just making that answer up, he legitimately didn't think that he had access to a vaccine, and he's one of the smartest guys in the world, and I believe him. And so what I would say is there's a lot of people in this bucket that just don't understand that the vaccine is widely available. Now, you can go down to CVS and get it, or Walgreens. You can get it in most cities at multiple places. So if you believe that you don't have access to the vaccine right now, I want to make sure you know that you do. But 2, there are some real reasons people can't do it. They're working long hours, they go home, they take care of kids. At my business, we gave paid time off so people could go get the vaccine. And you can talk to your employer about time off to go get a vaccine. And most employers are going to great lengths to do that. Number 2, a lot of people, and this is a big one, they just don't believe COVID's real. And so it's one of the main reasons I do a lot of these videos is to say, listen, this is real. I've seen it. I've seen people die. This is a big deal. And I want to put it on your radar that this is real. But a lot of people just don't believe still that it's real. And so sometimes if you can have conversations and explain using science and data and numbers how big of a deal this is, then that's someone that might change their mind and get a vaccine. Number 3, people are scared of side effects. I can just say as a physician, I've studied all the trials, the big 3, COVID, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, and the side effects are incredibly low. We've now vaccinated 168 million people in the United States, and the side effects are incredibly low. And so there was blood clots that looked like a real mathematical event, but those blood clots were about 28 people out of 9 million, and just with the Johnson & Johnson. So there's no blood clot issue with Pfizer or Moderna. And so if you're a young female and you're worried about the blood clot issue, you could get a Pfizer or Moderna and be okay. But side effects are incredibly low. Some of the lowest side effects I've ever seen in a large drug trial. Some people just don't trust vaccines, and specifically, they think it came to market too fast. These people are a little bit harder to convince. Anti-vaxxers, just classic anti-vaxxers, tend to be in this group. And I would say that 10 to 12%, you're probably not going to convince much. But I would just say, this did come to market really, really fast, but this mRNA technology has been around for 25 years, studying it in cancer research and other, scientific applications in the healthcare space. It didn't come to market just out of nowhere. The science was there and was ready to go. Some people don't trust institutions in general. Once again, this is a tough group to really convince. If you don't trust institutions, and we have a lot of reasons in this country not to trust, then it makes it hard. But still, you should understand when you're talking to someone that doesn't want to get a vaccine, they may just not trust the government in general. And then finally, and this is an interesting one, research shows that up to 50% of people that don't want to get vaccinated believe one or more conspiracy theories. And these are things that I was a little bit shocked by when I read into it. And I'm going to put a link below to this. But about 60% of people that don't want to get vaccinated believe that it will make you infertile. There's no data behind that. There's no research. There's absolutely no reason to believe that. I may in future videos talk about where that came from, but I've dug into it pretty deep and there's just really no science behind it. About 60% of people that haven't been vaccinated believe it will alter your DNA. Once again, that's not true. It's a very small little snippet of mRNA. They had to put a little fat vesicle around it because mRNA, by its very nature, is incredibly unstable and just disappears within seconds. And so they had to try to keep it stable long enough just for your body to recognize it, but it doesn't interact or change your DNA at all. 50% of people that haven't been vaccinated believe that the government is putting a microchip in the vaccine. I'm not meaning to smile on that, but it's a significant thing to overcome if the person you're talking to believes that there's a microchip. Sorry, my son Austin came in. If the person you're talking to believes they're putting a microchip in it, there's really probably no chance that they're ever going to get the vaccine. And so it's important not to waste too much of your time or energy on it. Once again, there's 24% that are right now saying they're not going to get vaccinated. I think half of that group might listen, but the people that believe that there's a microchip in there probably are not going to listen. And then another 50% believe that vaccines cause autism. It's interesting. My son just came in. He's got a very severe form of autism. I've done tons of research on vaccines and autism, and there's no evidence that vaccines cause autism. Matter of fact, it's a very interesting story. The doctor that originally published on vaccines causing autism ended up losing his medical license. All of his research was retracted. He falsified data, but it's continued for decade after decade, this theory that vaccines cause autism, which just isn't true. And so I hope some of that was a little bit helpful, just getting into a little bit of vaccinations. Why is it so important? Well, the R naught of this disease is somewhere between 6 and 8, the Delta variant specifically. And so now the bar has been reached. For us to get herd immunity, I talked about on these videos, 70 to 75%. And it's not that we're changing our mind or lying. The science has changed where now the disease is spreading and infecting more. So now with the R naught between 6 and 8, now we need to vaccinate probably between 84 and 88% of people for us to get herd immunity. Now, are we going to get to that? Maybe. Out of that 24%, if half of them change their mind and get vaccinated, we'll get to 88% of Americans that get vaccinated, and that's probably enough to get us to herd immunity. It's one of the reasons I'm making these videos and taking my time to educate. Guys, thanks for watching. If you think this was helpful, if you think someone needs to see this, please share it or send it to friends or family. I'm putting it on YouTube as well. And so a lot of people ask me about sending it to friends. It'll be on YouTube. You can search for it and text it to people. Maybe share it to friends and family that you think need to see it. Guys, God bless you. Stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.